folks. It's been a little while. I survived. Thought I would share an email that I got. It's actually a guy that I follow. I've seen a few things on YouTube with him, quite a few things on YouTube with him, and then I started following him on Twitter. Then he's got a Substack I follow, and he sends out emails every now and then with cool stuff in it. That's what this is. So he goes by the name Gurvinder. If you don't speak Indian, which I don't, Gurwinder, Gurvinder. He was a young guy, probably somewhere around 30, maybe a little older than that. And he writes stuff, but he puts together these lists of things, just good things to know and good things to know about and stuff like that. Sometimes he talks about them in detail. Some of these little email things, he just kind of gives you an overview of them, maybe in an example, and lets you think about them, that's what I'm doing right here. So this is not my stuff, this is his stuff, and he's collated and found it and put stuff, his own thoughts together on it and stuff like that. I will link to a couple of places you can find him somewhere down in the description here. Anyway, number one. It's called Goodhart's Law. And it states, when a measure becomes a goal, it ceases to be a good measure. And the example he gives, which I think is a great example of it, since schools started to use test scores as targets, they've gradually stopped teaching kids how to live fulfilling lives and now mainly teach them how to pass tests. So the test score being a measure of how well they're learning, how well they're applying the things they've learned, etc. When that became the goal, to get good scores, they'll do anything to make a good score. That's the goal, to get a good score. So everything else goes out the window besides getting a good score. And I think in his example, schools now, in a lot of instances, get funding the higher up on these score rating charts, or whatever you want to call them, that they get, states, federal level, local, whatever. So they'll do anything they can to make scoring on tests the priority. Doesn't matter if the kid knows why the answer's right or how to get the answer. They know the answer, period. And they tell them the answer. But you can apply that, the measure versus goal, to any situation, your job, relationships, anything. Anytime the measure becomes the goal, it loses its meaning at all. I mean, if your whole goal or if your measure in how well you're doing at your job is how many promotions or raises or something like that you get, if that becomes the goal, getting raises and promotions, you'll do anything, including backstabbing, cheating. I mean, morals may vary, but you see it all the time. I think that's a good one. Number two, I got to be careful because this could be a long video. Hotelling's Law. Rival products such as burgers, pop songs, political parties tend to grow more alike over time because creators copy more successful rivals to replicate their success and steal their customers or their audiences. The paradox of that is it increases the value of being different. If you're trying to be like everybody else to steal their customers or steal their thunder or take a slice of the pie, you lose your individuality. And then somebody comes along that's unique, all of a sudden everybody's going to start copying them because there's something different, especially if they're successful. So being an individual has its benefits. Being individual, being different definitely has its benefits. Number 3, the herostratic fame. Herostratic fame. Many people, this one is good. Many people would rather be hated than unknown. In ancient Greece, Herostratus burned down the temple of Artemis purely so he'd be remembered. Now we have, quote unquote, nuisance influencers who stream themselves committing crimes and harassing people purely for clout. It's better to, and you see it, people that aren't going to those extremes. There are people that go to those extremes, but there are people that don't go to those extremes that just get on there and post provocative stuff just so people will watch, and people will watch. That's why they do it, because people will watch. Most of the crap you hear people spouting, I don't know, maybe they come to believe their own bull, but I don't believe they start out that way. They see what gets clicks and what gets likes, and that's it. It goes right along with that last one. You know, copy the popular. Number 4, Siegel's Law. A man with a watch knows what time it is. A man with 2 watches is never sure. As an example says, ancient societies followed a single narrative. Modern societies are cacophonies of competing narratives. Without trust, more data doesn't make us more informed, but more confused. I thoroughly agree with that. And that can be applied in all manner of things. The reading recession. This one's sad. There's more text than ever, yet people are reading ever less and outsourcing writing to chatbots. This is dangerous because language is the basis of thought. If you can't read or write well, you won't think well. He's got a chart on here. Reading for pleasure declines in popularity. This is over a 15-year period. The average time spent reading for pleasure per day by Americans 15 years and older has dropped from 23 minutes, which isn't a lot, in 2004 to 16 minutes in 2019. That's a survey of about 26,000 people. All right, beginner's bubble effect. How true is this? Epictetus said, "You cannot learn what you think you already know." You see that in society? You cannot learn what you think you already know. The most ignorant people are not those who know nothing, but those who know a little, because a little knowledge grants the illusion of understanding, which kills curiosity and closes the mind. You see that all the time. I've heard people actually say, "I don't need to think about this. I've already thought about it." I've thought about that before. I'm through thinking. I'm old enough now where I don't have to think anymore. Parkinson's Law. That one sounds bad. Work expands to fill the time allotted for it. No matter the size of the task, it will often take precisely the amount of time you set aside to do it, because more time means more deliberation and more procrastination. Do you find that's true with you? or maybe with those you live or work with. The underlying principle known as induced demand applies to many other resources. For example, software expands to fill memories. It's called Worth's Law. Patients expand to fill hospital beds. Reamer's Law. Energy consumption expands to meet supply. Jevons paradox. That one is if you dig into that, Jevons paradox. Road congestion expands to fill roads. Breas paradox. See that all the time. But people, I used to work with people. It's like you give them an hour to do something that takes 15 minutes. They'll finish it right at the hour because they're getting paid by the hour. They're not going to do more work in an hour. They're going to fill more time with the work that's allotted to them. Benford's Law of Controversy. See if this sounds... We tend to fill gaps in information with emotion. We fear what we don't understand, love what we naively romanticize. As such, the things that fire people up the most are usually the things that they understand the least. How true is that? Pareidolia. This is an interesting thing. We see whatever we look for. I've said that before. I didn't realize somebody said it 1,000 years ago. For eons, survival favored the paranoid, those able to discern a predator from the vaguest outline. From these survivors, we inherited hyperactive pattern detection, which once saved us from the lions, but now curses us to see them in clouds, wrinkles in clothes. Pareidolia is an interesting thing. I experienced that. I see things in a pile of leaves. I'll see a face, or in a crumpled up shirt on the floor, I'll see something. It's pretty cool, but it's also odd, especially when you think about it and where it came from. Safetyism. This one drives me nuts. After U.S. schools banned peanuts because some kids had allergies, more kids developed allergies from a lack of exposure. We're increasingly protecting kids from life, which only makes them more vulnerable to it. Too much safety is dangerous. This one, I've actually seen a video where this study was implemented. This is interesting. It's called phronomophobia. In 2014, a researcher named Wilson and some others found that people with nothing to do except think or give themselves an electric shock would often choose the shock. Many of us are so eager to avoid ourselves that we'd rather do something harmful than nothing at all. I saw a video of this study. They sat these people down in a room, and I think they told them they would be there for an extended period of time, an unnamed period of time. We'll be back in a little while to check on you. By the way, don't touch that red button. It will shock you. And one after another, people would sit there, and after about, in some cases, less than a minute, but in some cases, after 3 or 4 minutes, they would start getting fidgety and just could not help themselves and would touch that button, and it would shock the pee out of them. It's crazy. It's like you can't just sit there. Serial position effect, SERIAL. We tend to recall the beginnings, which is known as primacy effect, and the endings, recency effect, of things better than the middles. So if you create anything with a beginning and ending, focus more there. Like this video, I'm 15 minutes in, people are probably just skipping like crazy to get to the end to see if I say anything because they're already tired of listening. I'm aware of that. I know some of you will watch it, but yeah, people remember the beginnings of books, shows, videos, and the ends. Licensing effect. Believing you're good can make you behave bad. Those who consider themselves virtuous worry less about their own behavior, making them more susceptible to ethical lapses. A big cause of immorality is self-righteous morality. Boy, do you see that in people. I can think of a few people that immediately come to mind. Preference falsification. If people are afraid to say what they really think, they will instead lie. Therefore, punishing speech, whether by taking offense or by threatening censorship, is ultimately a request to be deceived. That's really interesting. If people are afraid to say what they think, they'll lie. So yeah, if you censor somebody or threaten somebody to the point where they're afraid to say anything that uses this word or alludes to that subject or anything like that, you either take away their ability to think or cause them to lie about what they feel or what they think because they don't want to be caught. Nut picking. It's like cherry picking, but anyway. Online political debate mainly involves cherry picking the most outlandish members of the enemy side and presenting them as indicative in order to make the entire side look crazy. I've spoken about this. The culture war is essentially just side sneering, each side sneering at the other side's lunatics. You've got that far group of people on one side and that far group of people on the other side that get all the attention. Look how crazy they are. We're going to group everybody that's this side of the line into they. Moral pollution. We act like bad reputations are contagious, and mere proximity to something labeled immoral is itself immoral. Wow. Brands cut ties with people deemed unethical, not because they value ethics, but because they fear contamination. Cancellation is moral quarantine. Yeah. The KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. The design of everything is gradually being stripped down because simple is easy and safe. The less there is to offend or justify. But such rampant minimalism comes at a cost. Our cultures are losing their uniqueness and identity. I'm going to put these images right here that show some examples of this. It's pretty crazy. The cosmic schmuck principle. I love some of his names. There are two kinds of people in this world. Those who sometimes worry that they're a moron and actual morons. In other words, the best way to be less of an idiot is to treat yourself like one. If I can switch those words around a little bit. The best way to be less of an idiot is to think and believe that you don't know as much as you actually know. If you think you know everything, you're an idiot. Plain and simple. Yeah. The cynical genius illusion. There's only a couple more here. Cynical people are widely seen as smarter, but sizable research suggests they actually tend to be dumber. Cynicism is not a sign of intelligence, but a substitute for it, a way to shield oneself from betrayal and disappointment without having to do or think. I can think of a great example of somebody who's fallen victim to this. He speaks on YouTube quite frequently. If you think about that, a boxer's child paradox. Each generation tries to make life better for the next, but this deprives future generations of the ordeals needed to build character. In our relentless quest for ever more convenience, are we dooming posterity to weakness? It was more than I thought. Substitution hypothesis. This one should rile some feathers. We are wired for faith. So as we kill the old gods, we create new ones to replace them. New atheism gave rise to Atheism Plus, a quasi-religious religion dedicated to social justice. In the spiritual void left by receding religion, many now worship wokeness with a new original sin, whiteness, and their holy trinity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Ambiguity aversion. People tend to find uncertain outcomes less tolerable than bad outcomes. People tend to find uncertain outcomes less tolerable than bad outcomes. DeBurker and some other people in 2016 found that test participants who were told they had a small chance of receiving an electric shock exhibited much higher stress levels than those who knew for sure that they would receive an electric shock. Not knowing is worse than a bad outcome. Semantic stop sign. One way people end discussions is by disguising descriptions as explanations. For instance, the word evil is used to explain behavior, but really only describes it. It resolves the question not by creating understanding, but by killing curiosity. The toothbrush problem. Psychologists treat theories like toothbrushes. No self-respecting person wants to use another's. Theorists are incentivized by ego and professional pressures to overly rely on their own theory, so they often ignore the best models in favor of their own, applying them ever more widely, contorting them until they're warped. We see that all the time. This one's been around for a while. Ferguson effect. Black Lives Matter activism reduced policing of black communities, causing murder rates to spike and a net loss of thousands of black lives. BLM activists insist this effect is a myth, but multiple recent studies, he's got a few cited, suggest that it's actually real. Shiny object syndrome. We're drawn to whatever's new because our evolutionary history, new info tended to matter. Let me read that again. We're drawn to whatever's new because in our evolutionary history, new info tended to matter. But now it doesn't, because 99% of new info is clickbait, mass-produced, and rushed out to exploit our attraction to novelty. So stop chasing the new and seek info that stood the test of time. Don't stop absorbing things, but seek the info that has stood the test of time. There's a word for that. Number 27, agenda setting theory. Most of the time what's happening in the news isn't actually important. It only appears important because it's in the news. The public conversation is based on whatever's reported by the press, giving the impression that this news matters most, when really it's just what was chosen by a few editors and thoughtfully amplified by the masses. How common is that? Number 28, compassion fade. One death is a tragedy. A million is a statistic. That's a quote. When presented with two appeals for charity, one based on famine statistics and one based on a single starving girl, people tend to donate more to the girl. Our minds can't grasp big numbers, and there's so many great examples of that. So we navigate the world through stories, not statistics. We're moved by drama, not data. Number 29, the yes damn effect. You enthusiastically say yes to plans in the future, but when the time actually comes, you often regret it. The future seems like a different world, distant and infinite in capacity. So you stuff it with plans and forget about it, passing the buck to your future self. Trouble is, your future self tends to be a lot like you. So if you wouldn't want to do something today, you won't want to do it in the future. Anyway, that's Gurvinder's email that went out this time. I think there's some great stuff in there. Like I said, I'll put some links down there, and there should be a couple of pictures and things like that showed up in this as well. Any of that interest you? Find interesting? I know I've talked about similar things to quite a few of those. I've talked about Jevons paradox before. I've talked about quite a few of those things actually, or something similar to it. But anyway, if there's anything in there you want a standalone video on or anything like that, let me know. Or anything you want to discuss in there with me, let me know. Let's talk. I'm going to go finish my pipe. Y'all have a good day.